Okay, great. All right, so thank you for joining us today, everybody. It's good to see you. We are kicking off our second round of kind of our tech talks around best practices or tips and tricks. And this time around, we're going to be talking a lot about Docker. And we'll run a little bit of a poll a little bit later on in the tech talk to see how familiar y'all are using or how familiar you are with using Liquibase with Docker. But I'll kind of go through our agenda. So again, we'll talk a little bit about why we're here. We do have a code of conduct that we'll just briefly talk through. We'll do some very quick introductions. We'll make it very brief since we do have quite a few people here joining us today. Then we'll jump into the tips and tricks, which I'll pass off to Mike. And then we'll have a little bit of an open discussion and Q&A session, and then we'll talk through some community updates. And again, why we're here. So we love to meet each other in the Liquibase community. We love sharing insights and really just getting to know each other. The whole point is to ask questions, share problems or issues, and really just share insights. So I really do encourage you, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to pop them into the chat. And again, we're really cameras on friendly, so feel free to turn your camera on if you feel comfortable doing that. We love seeing new faces. If you'd rather keep it off, that's totally fine too. And I know some people are slowly joining us. We are recording this session, so something to keep in mind. And then code of conduct, I think it goes without really having to really speak much to it. But again, it's a welcoming community. We want to be respectful of each other. So please just mind our code of conduct. Okay, virtual introduction. So one thing that I think is fun is to get to know each other in a very quick way. So if you don't mind, it'd be great if you could share or change your Zoom name. There's a way to do it within your participant name, and you can change your name to having your country. So we'd love to see where you're coming from, and then your role as well. And I need to update mine, but what you can do is if you see yourself on the screen and there's the two buttons that say mute and the three little buttons to the right of that, that's where you can go and scroll down to rename, and that's how you can update it. So for example, I'm Caroline Hunt and I'm coming from the USA, specifically from Austin, Texas, and I am the brand and community marketing specialist at Liquibase. Okay. I'm updating mine. If y'all want to do yours. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and get started through the rest of it. I wanted to just mention today, we do have a couple of special guests. You probably see their cameras on as well. Andre and Jake are some of our DevOps engineers on the Liquibase team. They'll be here kind of pitching in to talk a little bit more about Docker as well. But today we will be led by Mike Olivas. Y'all probably are familiar with him as he is a developer advocate in the Liquibase community. So thank you again, Mike, for leading us today.
Thanks, Caroline.
So without further ado, I will pass it right over to you, Mike, to kick us off about tips and tricks for using Liquibase with Docker.
Yep. So before we do that, I think we have a poll to kind of go through to just kind of get a little bit of information from the team here and understand where you're coming from. So if you could answer the question there that's popped up on your screen and go ahead and hit submit, that would be great. How are we doing on folks submitting?
All right, yeah, we're getting some people, and I'll make sure we give it time. So I'm going to end the poll. So it looks like we have some people that are, hey, I don't even know what Docker is. That's totally fine. I'm glad that you're here today. That's perfect. We'll cover it. And then we do have some people that are somewhat familiar. And then, hey, we have a few experts here too. So maybe y'all can help share your insights with us too.
Right, great. So let me get back into, so why would you use the Liquibase Docker image that we provide in terms of being able to start with your usage of Liquibase? One of the things that helps do that is it's easier to get started. There's no installation necessary. The basic piece of code that you'll need is just the Docker framework, Docker engine running on your system, which if you're already doing that for your databases, it's just another image, another container that you're going to be running as far as Liquibase is concerned. So being able to get started and up and running, all the infrastructure is already there for you to go ahead and use. There's no additional installation necessary. It's just additional commands that you're going to end up using in order to be able to use Liquibase with Docker. Other key component there is that, operating system agnostic. So there's no need to deal with OS specific syntax. You'll use the same URL, the same parameters, regardless of the operating system you're running on, whether you're running on Windows, whether you're running on Linux, whether you're running on a Mac, as I'm doing here today. And that kind of makes it much easier, especially when it comes to using some of the additional functionality like snapshots or some of your command line additional parameters that you would use. It's easily incorporated into CICD tools. So a lot more continuous integration, continuous delivery tools are starting to add the capability of running in the cloud. So for instance, GitLab has their GitLab runners. GitHub has their actions to be able to run your changes and your updates. Jenkins, is familiar from CloudBees in the cloud. AWS Code and Code Pipeline in the AWS infrastructure in order to be able to build and deploy your changes. Microsoft's Azure DevOps and Travis CI are just a few examples of where they've given the ability to run Docker images in the cloud and being able to make your updates. It's easy to try new Liquibase versions. So you don't have to uninstall, reinstall, new versions as on your operating system. So just a simple tag to be able to change versions and see new features, new updates, new infrastructure to be able to access that pretty quickly. And we'll show that in the demonstration. All right, so moving on into the demo itself. So what my demo image kind of looks like is I'm going to be utilizing my Mac OS system. And on my Mac OS, I have a Docker image, a Docker engine that's been installed. And then I also have several databases that I have pulled down and I'm running locally on my system. Those databases, whether they're running locally in Docker, whether those are running in the cloud, whether those are on-premise databases, it doesn't matter from a Liquibase perspective, as long as your system, this Mac OS, can connect to them, whether it's a cloud infrastructure tunneled through, or whether it's locally, or whether it's inside the same Docker engine. You can download from Docker Hub those different images and create containers to be able to run Liquibase against those systems. So seeing that, I'm going to go ahead and go over here to my system here, and I'll show you what I have running. So right now, just a simple Docker PS will show me what is currently running on my system. I just have a MySQL and a Postgres database. If I run Docker images, you'll see all the images that I have. And so currently I have the latest and 461. So 461 is the latest. Those are the two images that I have locally on my system. In order to be able to run Liquibase, I'm going to run a command here. And so I'll decipher this command here. I'm going to go ahead and try and run my updates against a MySQL database. So Docker run, and then -rm says remove. So once the container spins up from that image, so you have the concept of images, which are basically your templates, so to speak. And then you create containers from those images and do your thing. So those are the instantiations for those who are familiar app developers. Those are the instantiations of the images to be able to do your work. -network host, this allows you, because you may, if you're mapping, you're running inside the container and you want to be able to connect to those other databases. In my case, we're running locally against another Docker container. And so -network host gives you that ability to utilize your host's network IP addresses versus, especially if you have local host. Local host would be the container itself, the Liquibase container. So -network host gives you the ability to talk to other images that are running on your system. And then -v, we're mapping my local directory here with my configuration information into the Liquibase changelog directory on the container itself. There's different ways of running that, whether you provide everything in the command line, whether you provide a properties file, as I have here as part of that, Liquibase properties. And then here we're running the 443. I'm stating I'm going to run the Liquibase Docker image and spin up a container with the 443. You'll see that it's not here locally. So what the first thing Docker will do is download that. And then after it's downloaded that locally, I'm going to just run a status just to see what my database status is. I do have my MySQL workbench up here. We're going to go ahead and refresh all. There's nothing behind the up my sleeves. There's nothing in the system. And we'll go ahead and run Docker status, right? So what that's going to do, as I stated, it's going to go download the image and then spin up the container and then run my command. So there we go. We're running 443. One chain set have not been applied as part of this. I can run my other Liquibase commands here as part of the whole change. Update SQL. Let's see what it's going to do as part of those changes. There's several changes here. It's a create table statement and an insert as part of this change. Here's my create table, right? That looks good. Best practice. Want to see what it's going to do. And then we'll go ahead and run our Liquibase update. Again, we're using our 443 version here. I haven't installed 443. I just ran Liquibase with the 443. And we'll go ahead and refresh here. And we'll see there are my new tables that I've added. There's that basic table and Liquibase. If you're familiar, those that are familiar with Liquibase, there's the changelog tracking table and the log table to prevent you from updating Liquibase or updating your databases at the same time. Apologies for the dog in the background. If you're hearing that barking, she has the ability to go out, but not sure what's going on there. There's my. So we've made our updates. Let's go ahead and just, again, we have the capability of rolling back. So I'm going to go ahead and roll back that change. Same, all your Liquibase commands are available to you as part of this. Roll back. And the reason I'm rolling back is I'm going to go ahead and run with the latest version. So let's refresh. My table is gone, right, as part of my rollback command. Now, I want to change this up and say, oh, let's go try a new version, right? Latest and greatest. And this is either knowing this is 4.6.1, or whether you call it latest, or whether you don't provide the tag itself. Here without a command, it'll just run Liquibase help. So I can do Liquibase help. There's all the commands. Let's go ahead and do a status. Now we're running with version 4.6.1. You saw I didn't have to install anything new, go download any updates, everything you need is in there in the image at this point. So you have your Java, for those that are, Node developers, for those that are .NET developers, all you need is Docker, the Docker image and container to be able to do this from the command line. There's no installation necessary, so to speak. There's my status. I can go ahead and run an update SQL. Same thing that we saw before, except we're now just running with the 4.6.1 version. And then our update, right? So same thing here. We go back, take a look. Let's go ahead and refresh. There's my table. It's back again, right, as part of it. Now that we've kind of done that, I've shown, MySQL. Let's kind of take a look at another database here. We're going to go ahead and pull up. This is a different way, different database. We're going to utilize formatted SQL here with an H2 database. So here I have my same thing I'm going to do. Again, those same commands, those same parameters, -rm, network host, mapping in my file system, my Liquibase properties file, and my H2 directory, which has all my changelog file. So we can do a status here and see what our status for H2 changes are. There's 3 change sets that have not been applied. I can do my same update SQL. We're running here with the latest version 4.6.1. There's my inserts. There's my create table statement, right? We can go ahead and do that and then update, run our update. Same thing, right? Different databases, same Docker image, ability to run against multiple different systems. Now that I have that, let's kind of take a look at, okay, now we've run these locally. Let's take a look at, we're here to talk about CICD, continuous integration, continuous delivery. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other capabilities that you can do now that you're a little bit familiar with Docker itself. I have here a public repo that you can utilize and go take a look at after this. And I'm going to go ahead and make my change or make that update as part of, sorry, let me go ahead and I've already made one update here. I'm going to go ahead and add a new table as part of this and check it in. So we're going to go ahead and create a new table called product. Same thing you would do with your database changes. And I'm going to make a mistake on purpose here. So we're going to go ahead and the mistake I'm going to make is I'm not going to change that primary key. That primary key already exists. So when this actually runs and I check it in, it's actually going to fail as part of the process. But I'll walk through that as it happens. So I'm going to git add my change log. All right, I checked it in as part of the CICD process here with GitLab. Any change automatically runs the build. So if we actually go look at our CICD pipeline here, we should see a build kickoff. And we'll go ahead and see the different jobs that are, we have a build job, we have a test job, and we have a, that test job is running on test environment. And if that succeeds, then it moves over into the deploy job. While this is running, let's go ahead and take a look at what that system looks like. So if we go back to files, and we'll go ahead and look at our CI job. Here we have, and we're pulling, again, it's as simple as this one line to be able to add. I'm not sure if you can actually see, maybe I'd make it a little bit bigger. This is one line to be able to add your Docker image, right? Liquibase Docker image, and we've made it a variable to put in different versions as we increment, making it very easy. I could have just as easily put that line here. You can do, your mileage may vary. And then the build jobs themselves, running our Liquibase version just to tell you what's going on. And then our status as part of our build. Then the next stage, we actually run Liquibase update. And then if that succeeds, then we'll actually move on into the next job, which is deploying to production. We can add additional Liquibase commands as part of this. Is just trying to make it fairly simple here as part of the demonstration, but you can add additional Liquibase commands like our update SQL as best practices. You can do rollbacks, you can do all your snapshots, best practices kind of mentality to be able to utilize this Docker image that we build as part of our Liquibase infrastructure. Now that we've kind of talked through what that looks like, let's go ahead and take a look at the pipeline here. And yep, sure, indeed, this failed. Let's go take a look at where that failed. The build job failed as part of this. You can see there's duplicate identifiers here as part of that. So let's go ahead and fix that as part of our update. Duplicate set of identifiers. The reason here, there's one, the change set ID is the same. And actually, I can go ahead and walk through this. again, and will fail as part of a primary key, but I'm going to go ahead and make that change just in the interest of time and go ahead and fix the primary key issue that I know is going to happen as well. We'll go ahead and save that. So what it caught me was I had the same change set ID here for two different change sets. And that's why the build failed. There's my change. My primary key. We'll do a git push. All right, if we go back, and this pipeline should kick off because it saw a new change. While this is running, in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and take a look at the other infrastructures, the other kind of key things you can do as part of your CICD products. So this one, just to kind of give you a sense of, this one does not have Docker itself. We're just using the node one. But just one thing to highlight here is if you have additional databases that you're connecting against and you're wanting to test in your CI/CD process, this one is Mongo as an example, but we could have just as easily used the Docker image for MySQL or Postgres here, and then run our changes here as part of our CI/CD process. GitHub Actions, we talked about. There is a Liquibase GitHub action that you can utilize. Behind the scenes, this is using the Liquibase Docker image. And there's README there in terms of being able to utilize how you would use GitHub Action or Liquibase GitHub Actions. And this is the actual GitHub action. And then we also have an example of how you would do your own GitHub action to utilize our GitHub action. Or you can create your own repository and utilize the README here as part of that. You can utilize code build, right? One of the key kind of tips and tricks in terms of our code build environment that you want to, typically because you're pulling from hubdocker.com, the kind of key thing we found out is you'll need to utilize registry hub docker / Liquibase, and then the version that you want to tag, whether that's latest or whether that's 461. That's the kind of key thing that you're going to need when you're running the Docker image and container in AWS. And then we have some Toolbox Print in our Liquibase Toolbox. You can kind of see examples of utilizing Jenkins as part of our updates or as part of utilizing Docker. So here we pass this time, we can kind of go take a look at each of these build jobs. We're just running you can kind of see the output there. We're running the 461. There's our status for our build job itself. If we go back and look at the other jobs that ran as part of this, we can see there's our test job. Our test job indeed succeeded. What is that doing? That's running an update on our test database. And then lastly, if we go back and look at the jobs, because each one of those jobs in the pipeline that we have succeeding continues forward, here we're updating our prod database. So that's my demonstration of the different systems, different OS, different CI/CD tools. Any questions based on that information that I've shown so far?
And if you have a question, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself as well. You don't have to type it into the chat.
So what we kind of showed while we're waiting for just any questions, easier to get started, right? We talked about not having to download anything, being able to, whether it's Windows, Linux, Mac, you're able to easily change different versions. As you saw, when we go from 4.3 to 4.6, which is the latest. And then also looking at the CICD tools, GitLab, GitHub Actions, or Jenkins. We didn't show Octopus Deploy, but Octopus Deploy does have a step template that they have created to be able to utilize the Liquibase Docker instance as well. We showed you AWS Code Pipeline. There's Azure DevOps. There's many more systems that have Docker capabilities in their CI/CD components to be able to utilize.
One thing I was going to mention too, so a lot of the things that he discussed, we have additional resources as far as getting started with Docker. There's a lot of different blogs and videos that you can take a look at as well. And again, we'll send the slides after we finish with this, but we can probably go ahead and pass it off to more of our open discussion section of the talk. And I'm curious. I mean, I'll be passing it off to Kevin, but, a preliminary question that I would have is, for those who are joining us today that have never maybe heard of Docker or used Docker before, what are things that you're interested in learning more about with using Docker and Liquibase? Do you all have any kind of questions around that at all? Okay, that's fine. Kevin, I can pass it off to you if you want to start kicking off our open discussion section.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm just curious, what did y'all think? Did you learn something new that you didn't know, or was this familiar material? Maybe Matt, could you kind of give us a sense of what you thought?
No, this is something that I hadn't used before. And executing Liquibase, it always usually had it installed locally or it had installed in my CI/CD tools. And so this is a nice way to kind of get around having to have those local installations set up and having to do the care and feeding of those and making sure to get those up to date. I can just pull the latest image whenever I want to use it. So.
Yep, no, it's actually really good for that. And depending on, if you don't need a specific version of Liquibase, just using the latest version, you're always up to the latest version. You don't have to worry about it when it comes out. It's available and you're good to go. So it is very convenient that way. Great. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree. It's really convenient to just not have to have other developers install. Be sure you're on this version of Liquibase or something. It's really nice to just get the latest, put that in the. We use Docker Compose, so just put all that in the script. It's taken care of. Nobody has to worry about it. And I think what I learned about this that was really helpful is seeing that list of resources, because I worked my way through this about 3 months ago. It was a little bit of a struggle, but I was able to wire up both Postgres and MongoDB into our build, which is run under Azure DevOps. So now I'm going to go check those resources and see how I should have done it.
I'm sure it'll be exactly the same. It'll be fine.
Okay, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I was curious, maybe Rashid or George, are y'all using Docker right now with Liquibase in your environments, or is this your first exposure to it?
Well, we plan to use Docker. We are not using it already, so I gather as much knowledge as I can about it. And we are implementing now some Liquibase migrations, not yet finished, but using the CLI version of it.
So you were saying you're using the Liquibase version, and you are, or you're not using the CLI version?
We are using the CLI version, but we are now in a prototyping phase, not using it productively yet. Just checking out, doing some proof of concept, migrations, testing, setting up our environment and our processes around it. Yeah. And we may need to switch to the Docker version in the future if all of our infrastructure will migrate to microservices and to using Docker, which is very probable. probable, but not yet set. So it will be very useful to have this option. Great to learn about it.
Excellent. Well, I hope it was helpful.
A lot. Thanks.
I had a comment about something that Mike showed, is that the versions of Liquibase that you can easily select, and Docker makes it really nice with the Docker file or Docker compose files to be able to pin your CI/CD to a particular version. So if you have a compliance need, or you want to make sure it's really uniform, you want to not allow other versions of Liquibase to run, you can sort of pin it. And that's a sort of subtle point, but very powerful.
That's a really good point, Andre. Thank you.
So we actually, I know that, Mike touched on the GitHub action. We actually did the GitHub action as part of one of our Liquibase hackathons. So we're really proud of that. And we actually use it internally as well. We dog food this. So if you're familiar with the test harness, that is an open source repo that we have. If you actually look at our pipeline for that, we're utilizing Liquibase Docker, Liquibase GitHub Actions to test our test harness against AWS databases, which again, under the covers, the GitHub action is just running the Docker container. So you can see how you can kind of start to layer all this stuff together, and it's really nice. I actually use the Liquibase Docker container regularly for my day-to-day job. So I really like it, obviously.
That's great, Jake. I'm curious to hear from a few other people and kind of hear your story and where you are in your Liquibase journey, and if you've been able to try out the Docker version of it yet. And I can certainly call on people if you want.
Hey, Kevin. It's Noman from UAE. So actually, I just heard that Liquibase is a new term for me. I just want to learn. Actually, I was learning in last week for something to running on Docker, but unfortunately, I'm not able to run it. So I saw it today in the presentation, the other one. So he's able to run it. I will try myself again to how it works. So this is new for me, and even for this region, I did not find anyone who's using this. So I'm working on it to learn it, and we'll try to implement in our company. We'll see how it goes.
No, that sounds great, and good luck. And if you have questions while you're going through this, remember that you can go to forum.liquibase.org and post your question. We have a lot of people in the community that answer, and we also have a few people here at Liquibase that answer questions. So if you run into problems, make sure to use that as a resource.
Yeah, sure. I will definitely contact you.
And of course, Caroline's going to be sending out the deck when we're done, and she has a whole bunch of really good links in there. And I'm sure some of those are getting started links. So there may be a recipe that you can follow, just follow step by step and get you up and going. So hopefully with those two sets of resources, you should be good to go.
Yeah, that will be good. Yeah.
Excellent. Renato, I'm curious, are you using Liquibase yet, or is this also, are you kind of the same place as Noman and you're just getting started? Well, it was worth a try. All right. Anybody else want to kind of, do they have any questions or want to share where they are, what they're doing with Liquibase, or have any questions for Mike or Jake or Dre?
Hey, this is Prashanth here. I've been using Liquibase now for over a month. It's been a great tool for us. We use it in our GitLab CI/CD pipelines. It's really streamlined how we're doing our database deployments. Although we are in our prototype environment for Snowflake, but it's really helpful over there. I joined this meetup a little late, so I don't know much about GitLab Docker image right now, but I can see it being useful for us, because I think it was Matt who answered first, mentioned about how he's probably going to use this Docker image to work around some of the limitations of Liquibase being installed directly in your CI/CD pipelines. and how we can work around that. So I'm curious to go through this video and learn more about it.
Excellent. Yep. Well, it's certainly being recorded, and it will certainly be sent out after this, so you should be able to review that. It was a good demo, so thank you, Mike. Yeah, it really just simplifies. It just gets rid of all that setup work that you would need to do if you're putting it on your own machines and trying to manage it over time. It really it clears a lot of that away, and you can really focus on the task at hand, which is just getting your pipelines automated. So it's very helpful in automation for sure.
So Kevin, I noticed from the poll that there was some that are just getting started, not with Liquibase with Docker, but with just Docker in general. Mm-hmm. Are there any questions that we can answer about Docker in general? I mean, did the concept make sense for those that maybe are new to Docker? Okay, just thought I'd check.
I might have one question around
Sure.
that. This is Prashanth here. So in our CI/CD pipeline, so Snowflake, I'm not sure has a Docker image or not. Pretty sure it wouldn't. But we test our DDL scripts against ephemeral Postgres Docker image. And then if the scripts look good, then we go ahead and we try deploying it to the Snowflake database. And so that way we can catch a lot of our issues even before we hit the database. Would something like that be feasible with this Liquibase Docker image? I'm sorry if it was already covered in the video, but I thought I might just give it a shot. Ask the question now.
No, with yes. So that is definitely was not covered in the video itself, but the short answer to your question, can it be done? So you use the out-of-the-box Docker image for the Postgres, and then you would use, we are actually building a Snowflake Docker image as well, which has the drivers for Snowflake. And so when you deploy to Snowflake, you would be using a different Docker image for the Snowflake one. Or the third, capability is, because we provide all the source, the Docker files themselves, you could, if you wanted to, build your own, that has both Postgres and Snowflake in it, if you would like to build that out yourself too.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. Yeah, I can try to give that a shot. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I was going to mention, it's good to see you, Prashanth, is that Prashanth has completed the Liquibase Fundamental Certification. So one thing that we mentioned as kind of a pro tip is that using Docker with any Liquibase University courses is really great because it's easy to use. And so that's definitely a tip that we like to give to people if you're looking to complete those courses. I'll put a link in there in case you have not taken a look at Liquibase University yet. It's really great, especially if you are new to Liquibase or maybe you just want to touch up on some of your skills. I encourage you to take a look. But again, Docker is really, really handy for using it with Liquibase University.
Yeah, that's great, Caroline. And I think the beginner, there's kind of like two sets of courses. There's the fundamentals course, which is really kind of where you get started, but there are a whole series of intermediate courses that have been released now. They get into a lot more depth of the details of Liquibase. And so, I definitely encourage you to go check it out. And for all the exercises and all the courses using the Docker instance, the Docker container that contains Liquibase is super helpful. So good point, Caroline. Thank you.
Any other questions that y'all have maybe around it, or anything that you've seen if you're, you've used Liquibase with Docker and maybe there's something that you have an idea about? We'd be curious to hear more about that as well. I know that there's a couple projects that are underway right now that we're working on. I think Andre shared with me a couple days ago the AWS example. Do you want to mention that at all?
Yeah, Mike and I have started to work sort of on a prototype where we will sort of instrument that Docker container with the AWS Session Manager agent, which then allows a lot more detailed reporting to the Amazon CICD pipelines. That's a work in progress. We've got to see where it goes, but that was something that the community has requested. And I think, the more feedback we get, the better we can make the product that way. So.
And again, the best way to do that is by submitting a pull request, which I have a link to that in the slides as well. So you can visit the repository in GitHub.
I just comment that I think that the Liquibase Docker implementation is easy to use compared to other Docker stuff that I've tried. It seems like some other Docker programs, you end up having to copy your files into their container for it to operate on correctly, and just things that aren't really very friendly, especially when you're just trying to figure out what Docker is doing. And I've just found this one easy to use, and once I figured out the volume mapping, probably the trickiest part, and it seems to work easily. So good job.
Thanks.
Good.
So the other thing we're trying to kind of make sure is that we don't make the image too big, right? So so that's where we're balancing, size and all the capabilities with also performance too. So just trying to get from the community, get feedback, and understand what's absolutely necessary and what are nice to haves and what are kind of future enhancements kind of things, as well as we kind of decipher size versus performance.
Yeah, if I may dovetail on that comment, actually, take a look at the Docker file as your own journey with Docker sort of goes along. The Docker files are very readable. That's one thing that I've liked about it, and understanding how they build the container, and will give you a sort of hint as to how to might customize it for your own use if you need to do that. Because we can't build everything into that everyone wants necessarily without bloating the image, but it is very easy to, it's very accessible is my point, and you can modify it as needed.
Excellent. Thank you, Dre. Last call for questions or thoughts, ideas, and we could even open up to things past Docker if you just happen to have some other questions burning in your mind that you want to know answers to. We do have a nice selection of people here, including Nathan, the Liquibase founder, so we should be able to answer whatever you can throw our way. Jeff was thinking about it.
Well, no, I was just going to kind of follow up on Caroline's comment about the Liquibase University. I've been using Liquibase since 2016. Kind of comes and goes with what I do, but still, I love the classes. They're pretty compact, so it doesn't take a long time. But I learned something from every one of them. Even the fundamentals, when I took it, I still learned stuff from it. So if you haven't seen that stuff, it's really pretty neat.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, Jeff is one of the only people to have completed all of our courses. It's awesome. Amazing.
And that says a lot, because I think the newest one just came out a couple of weeks ago. So on top of it.
Yeah. Amazing.
That was perfect timing. I had a little time to spare that morning when it came out, so I just went ahead and did it, and it was great.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you're getting good value out of it. I mean, we have a really good team of instructional designers that are creating those courses, and we've been really happy with the work they've done, and everybody's really enjoyed it in the community. So
definitely thanks for working.
All right. Well, maybe we jump to any announcements that you have, Caroline?
Sure. Oh, thank you, Mike, for sure. Okay, perfect. So a few community updates that I just like to cover. In case you have not yet seen it, we did have a recent release last week. Liquibase 4.6.1 is now available. We always like to give shout outs to people that help contribute. And so here's a list of people's GitHub usernames, but again, it's always a team effort, and we really appreciate your contributions, even if it's just beyond contributing to code. And if you've ever contributed content or whatever, we thank you for that. So if you've not yet checked out, you can use Docker to check it out before you fully install it, right? And then I know we just talked about Liquibase University. We do have a recent course that we launched. Jeff has already taken it, and it's our common Liquibase design patterns. So I encourage you to take a look at it. We do have a different level. Well, we have different levels, obviously, but there's a few courses within the intermediate level. This is the 4th one. So if you've not yet taken your Liquibase fundamental certification, I would encourage you to start there and then kind of work your way through the intermediate courses. But we'll have more announcements around Liquibase University soon, some exciting updates. So I'll save that for another time. And then looking for some community glue. Kevin, do you want to actually touch on this yourself?
Sure, happy to.
Yeah.
So we're looking for another technical community manager, and this is really to help us manage our online community. So really, there's 3 key things that we need for this person. Somebody who can learn Liquibase enough to be considered a Liquibase power user. Someone who can write content that helps users learn about and use Liquibase. And somebody who is excited about engaging with users and contributors in both the forum and across the rest of our digital properties to help answer questions and really bring everybody together. So if you know somebody, I would love to meet them. So if you could just send me kind of an email introduction and their LinkedIn profile, I'd be happy to. I'd really appreciate it. And if one of you want to come join us, by all means, feel free. We'd love to have you as part of the team.
Yeah, and to that extent, we do hire internationally, and we are a 100% remote company as well. So if you liked hanging out with me, Mike, and Kevin, and Jake, and Andre, and Nathan, you can come hang out with us even more by joining our team officially. So please reach out if you have interest. We also, I'm happy to post a link to this when I email it out, but we are hiring for a lot of other positions as well, not just for the community, the technical community manager. So if you want to take a look at those other open positions, I encourage you to take a look.
I think that's liquibase.com/careers. Is that right?
Yes, that's it. That is it. I can post a link in the chat too, but I'll send that out in my follow-up email to y'all. But then last but not least, again, we like to do these every month, the 2nd Thursday of the month. And so we'll schedule one for December 9th. If you have ideas of tech talks that you are curious about, we've seen some people out in the wild asking questions around Docker. So that's why we formulated this one in particular. So if there are more things that you want to learn about, we would love to hear from you. And we're happy to put a tech talk together around that. But without further ado, I believe we are at the end of our session. Anyone have any last questions or announcements that they want to share?
I was just going to ask you, how do they tell you what they're interested in? Can they?
Yes. So what we'll do is send out a message in the meetup group. I think what we're going to do is send a little bit of a survey this time so that you can actually give us more direct feedback around the actual session itself. I know that we have the meetup survey that some people have filled out, but we'd like a little bit more insight. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll send that out today.
Great. Thank you, Caroline. Well, and thank you, everybody. Really appreciate everybody joining us. And thank you, Mike and Jake and Dre. It's been really good, very informative. So thanks a lot. You all have a good rest of your day.
Well, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.